Welcome back to the deep dive. Ready to dive back in to modern Indian history?
Definitely.
Great. So this is round two of
Yeah.
our little journey here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're picking up right where we left off. We're going to tailor this deep dive to, help you out with your UPSC goals
Right.
for all those history buffs out there, from school to college and beyond.
Absolutely.
So make sure you hit subscribe and give us a like if you're finding this helpful. Today we are diving deep into the life and legacy of Jyotiba Phule.
Yes.
A name you'll definitely come across as you prep for your GS1 paper.
Sure.
But beyond the exam, Phule's story is one that can really make you think about social reform, education,
Yeah.
challenging norms,
Mm-hmm.
even in the 19th century.
It's incredible. You know, it's really important understanding him not just as a name on a list, but as a key figure in the larger social reform movements of the time.
Yeah, okay, so let's start with his background. Phule wasn't born into a position of privilege, was he?
No, not at all. He was born into the Mali caste, traditionally associated with gardening.
Okay,
But, think about how this might have shaped his worldview.
right.
How might growing up outside of the dominant social structures have influenced his ideas?
That's a really good point. It makes you wonder how his early experiences laid the groundwork for his radical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of radical, his education played a huge role, right? He went to a Scottish missionary school.
Imagine that in 1841,
Yeah.
a young man
Right.
from a marginalized caste exposed to Western ideas of equality and justice through his education.
Yeah.
It's said that Thomas Paine's Rights of Man deeply influenced him.
Wow.
And, this exposure is key for you to understand because it shaped Phule's critique of the caste system, something you'll likely encounter in UPSC materials.
Okay, so it's like a light bulb moment for him.
It is.
Right. He's suddenly exposed to ideas that are challenging the very fabric of the society he lives in.
Totally.
And he didn't just, absorb these ideas. He took action. Right. He started writing. And not just dry academic stuff.
No.
Right.
He wrote to critique the systems that he saw.
Okay, so he was a prolific writer.
Yeah.
Gulamgiri, meaning slavery, is probably his most famous work.
Yes.
He directly compared the caste system to slavery.
He did.
Didn't he?
Yeah.
It must have been quite shocking for the time.
It's a fascinating point.
Yeah.
How did this idea of slavery, especially in the context of British colonialism, resonate with the masses at the time? Phule didn't shy away from bold comparisons.
No.
He exposed the exploitation inherent in the caste system and argued that the Brahmins, who were at the top of the hierarchy, used their position to maintain power.
Okay.
Remember, these ideas are crucial for your UPSC prep, understanding the nuances of social hierarchies and their critique.
And Gulamgiri wasn't his only impactful work.
No, not at all.
Shitkaryacha Asud,
Yes.
or Farmer's Whip,
Yeah.
tackles another important issue, the economic exploitation of farmers.
This is where it gets really relevant to your UPSC study, especially when you consider topics like agrarian distress and historical economic policies.
Yeah.
He highlights how farmers, many from lower castes, were trapped in debt cycles with moneylenders and landlords, often from upper castes.
Wow.
He saw the clear link between social and economic injustice, a theme that continues to resonate in modern India.
So he was calling for a radical change,
Absolutely.
not just tweaks to the existing system.
He advocated for liberty, egalitarianism, and even had socialist leanings. Imagine how radical those concepts were in 19th century India.
That's wild.
His ideology was a head-on assault against the rigid hierarchies of the time.
And this desire for change led him to establish the Satyashodhak Samaj. Right. So he didn't just want to talk about reform, he wanted to put it into action.
This drive for empowerment didn't stop at theory.
Yeah.
He, along with his followers, founded the Satyashodhak Samaj,
Okay.
the Seekers of Truth, in 1873.
Got it.
This organization, you'll see, is directly relevant to your understanding of social reform movements in India.
Okay, so we've got this organization dedicated to fighting injustice.
Yes.
Advocating for equal rights, especially for those from lower castes. What kind of reforms were they pushing for?
Well, think about some of the most pressing social issues of the time. Untouchability, child marriage, and other discriminatory practices.
Right.
The Satyashodhak Samaj aimed to tackle them head-on.
Okay.
It was a platform for empowering those who had been silenced for centuries, and a testament to Phule's commitment to translating thought into action. And this commitment to action is perhaps best exemplified in Phule's tireless advocacy for women's education.
Yeah.
Now remember, we're talking about 19th century India,
Right.
where the idea of educating women was practically revolutionary.
It's hard to imagine the pushback he must have faced.
Oh, I know.
But he didn't just talk about it, he took concrete steps, right?
He did, absolutely.
Right.
He started by educating his own wife, Satyashodhak Phule.
Wow.
She went on to become an extraordinary educator and social reformer herself, a true testament to the transformative power of education.
It's an inspiring story, and it makes you realize the ripple effects of one person's determination.
Right.
Together, they established Pune's first native girls' school in 1848.
Incredible, isn't it?
What an achievement.
Imagine the courage it took to challenge those deeply ingrained societal norms.
Yeah.
They faced opposition from conservative forces, and financial constraints after the 1857 revolt only added to their struggles.
Right.
But their work paved the way for future progress in women's education.
It makes you think, doesn't it? How often do we take access to education for granted?
It's true.
Phule's story is a stark reminder of the battles fought to make it a reality for so many.
Absolutely.
And his commitment to challenging the status quo didn't end there.
No, it didn't.
Right. He was a vocal critic of Romanical supremacy,
Yes.
seeing the caste system as inherently unjust and calling for its complete dismantling.
That's a radical stance, even by today's standards.
It really is. How do you go about challenging those entrenched power structures?
Phule's approach was two-pronged.
Okay.
He used his writings to expose the flaws in the system,
Okay.
but he also took symbolic actions to undermine its foundations.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, he opened a community bathing pool outside his home, defying the custom that barred lower castes from using public wells.
So a very deliberate act of rebellion against those purity and pollution norms that were used to justify discrimination.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was a bold statement, declaring the inherent dignity of all individuals regardless of their caste,
Yeah?
and he didn't stop there.
Oh, wow.
He even practiced inclusive dining customs, inviting people from all castes to eat together at his home, a direct challenge to the rigid social boundaries of the time.
These actions might seem small, but they were incredibly significant in that context.
They really were.
He was chipping away at the very foundation of the caste system, wasn't he?
Absolutely.
Right.
And this is where Phule's work becomes crucial for understanding the historical context of social reform movements in India,
Yep.
which is a key area for your UPSC preparation.
Got it.
His ideas about caste annihilation, social equality, and women's empowerment had a profound influence on later leaders like B.R. Ambedkar and Mahatma Gandhi.
So he's often seen as a forerunner,
Yes.
right? Like a pioneer who laid the groundwork for the larger movements that followed.
Exactly.
And his influence goes beyond specific individuals.
Yeah.
Right. He used the term Dalits long before it became commonplace.
He did.
Okay.
He used the term Dalits, meaning broken or oppressed, to highlight the systematic marginalization faced by those at the bottom of the caste hierarchy.
Okay.
It was a deliberate choice, a powerful way of emphasizing their suffering and demanding recognition of their rights.
His legacy is woven into the fabric of social justice movements,
Mm-hmm.
not just in India, but around the world.
That's right.
Right.
I mean, it really is.
His unwavering commitment to challenging injustice, regardless of the personal cost, continues to inspire activists and reformers to this day.
Absolutely.
And here's a fascinating anecdote
Okay.
that captures the respect he garnered during his lifetime.
I like that.
In 1888, during a social reform conference in Mumbai,
Mm-hmm.
a prominent social worker named Vithalrao Krishnaji Vandekar bestowed upon Phule the title Mahatma, meaning great soul.
Oh, wow.
So he was recognized as a Mahatma even before Gandhi,
I didn't know that.
right?
Wow.
That title truly reflects the profound impact he had on his contemporaries
Mhm.
and the way his work resonated with those who yearned for a more just and equitable society.
It's incredible.
Right. It's a testament to his dedication to the upliftment of the marginalized and his unwavering belief in the inherent equality of all human beings.
Absolutely. And this commitment to action is maybe best shown in Phule's advocacy for women's education.
Right.
Now remember, we're talking about 19th century India,
Yeah.
where the idea of educating women was practically revolutionary.
It's hard to even imagine the pushback he
Oh, yeah.
must have faced.
Tons.
Right. But he didn't just talk about it.
Nope.
He took concrete steps.
Absolutely he did. He started by educating his own wife, Savitribai Phule. She became an amazing educator
Yeah.
and social reformer herself. A true testament to the power of education.
It's an inspiring story. It
Yeah.
really is. And it just makes you realize how one person's determination can have such a ripple effect.
Right?
They established Poone's first native girls' school in 1848.
I know. Incredible, right?
What an achievement.
You can just imagine the courage it took to challenge those societal norms.
For sure.
They faced opposition
Yeah.
from conservative forces and financial constraints after the 1857 revolt,
Of course.
which just added to their struggles.
Right.
But, their work paved the way for future progress in women's education.
Makes you think.
It does.
Right. How often do we take access to education for granted?
All the time.
Boole's story is a reminder
That's
of the
right,
battles
yeah.
fought
Totally.
to make it a reality for so many.
Yeah, and his commitment to challenging the status quo didn't end there.
Right. It didn't stop there.
He was a vocal critic of Brahminical supremacy.
Yeah.
He saw the caste system as totally unjust and called for it to be dismantled completely.
That's a radical stance.
It is, even by today's standards.
How did he go about challenging those in power?
Well, Phule's approach was two-pronged.
Okay.
He used his writings to show the flaws in the system,
Okay.
but he also took symbolic actions
Right.
to undermine its foundations.
Interesting.
For example, he opened a community bathing pool outside his home,
Wow.
defying the custom that barred lower castes from using public wells.
So a very deliberate act of rebellion
It was...
against those purity and pollution norms
Absolutely.
that were used to justify discrimination.
It was a bold statement showing the inherent dignity of all people regardless of caste.
Powerful.
And he didn't stop there.
Oh, wow.
He even practiced inclusive dining customs, inviting people from all castes to eat together at his home.
Oh, wow.
A direct challenge to the rigid social boundaries of the time.
These actions might seem small,
Yeah,
but they were so significant.
they were huge
Big damn.
in that context.
He was chipping away at the foundation of the caste system.
He was, absolutely, and this is where Phule's work is crucial for understanding the history of social reform movements in India,
Oh, okay.
which is a key area for your UPSC prep.
Yeah.
His ideas about caste annihilation, social equality, women's empowerment
Yeah.
had a big influence on leaders like B.R. Ambedkar and Mahatma Gandhi.
So he's seen as a forerunner.
Yes.
Right. A pioneer.
Exactly.
For the movements that came later.
That's right.
And his influence goes beyond these specific people.
Yes, it does.
He used the term Dalits
He did.
long before it was widely used.
Yes. He used the term Dalits, meaning broken or oppressed,
Right.
to highlight the marginalization faced by those at the bottom of the caste hierarchy.
Right.
It was a powerful way to emphasize their suffering and demand recognition of their rights.
Yeah, his legacy is really woven into the fabric of social justice movements.
It is.
Not just in India, but around the world.
That's right.
Right. This unwavering commitment to challenge injustice regardless of the cost continues to inspire people
Totally.
to this day.
I agree.
And here's an interesting anecdote
Okay.
that shows the respect he had
Okay.
during his lifetime.
All right.
In 1888, during a social reform conference in Mumbai, a prominent social worker named Vitharao Krishnaji Vandekar gave Phule the title Mahatma, meaning great soul.
Wow, I did not know that.
So he was recognized as a Mahatma,
Wow.
even before Gandhi.
That's amazing.
That title really reflects the impact he had
Yes.
on those around him
It does.
and the way his work connected with people
Absolutely.
who wanted a more just and equal society.
It's a real testament to his dedication
Right?
to uplifting the marginalized and his belief in the equality of all people.
It's really incredible to think about the lasting impact Phule has had, especially considering, the time he lived in.
It is.
His ideas were revolutionary.
They were, for sure. And, his work wasn't just theoretical. He was really engaged in trying to make actual change.
Yeah.
He built schools, advocated for policy reforms, and created spaces for those who had been marginalized to speak up.
Yeah.
And this is a big takeaway for you, especially as you think about your future as a civil servant.
So it's not just about understanding these social issues, but it's also about actively working to address them.
Exactly. He understood that you need more than just good intentions for social change.
Yeah.
You need action, and you have to be willing to challenge the existing power structures.
And this is where I think Phule's story is really relevant
It is.
for UPSC experts,
Yeah.
right? What lessons can someone who's preparing for the civil services, what can they take away from his life and his work?
Well, first of all, Phule's work shows us how important historical context is.
Oh,
Understanding the social, economic, and political landscape of 19th century India is so important
yeah.
for getting a grasp on those reform movements.
Right, and for tackling those GS1 questions on modern Indian history.
Exactly. And secondly, Phule's approach to social reform wasn't just about making small changes here and there.
Okay.
He saw how connected issues like caste, gender, and economic inequality really were.
Yeah.
And he was all for a way to address them all together,
Right.
which is something you can use in your own understanding of policymaking and governance.
So it's about seeing the bigger picture and understanding how all the parts of society are connected.
Exactly. And third, Phule's belief in education is a lesson every aspiring civil servant should take to heart.
Okay.
He saw education as a tool for liberation, for empowering people, and for building a more just and equal world.
This really connects with the idea of civil service as a way to serve and uplift the nation, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And lastly, and maybe most importantly, Phule's life is all about the courage and integrity it takes to stand up against injustice and speak up for those who are marginalized.
Right.
He wasn't afraid to confront those in power, even when it meant personal risk.
It's a good reminder that true leadership is about standing up for what's right, even when it's really hard.
Yes, absolutely.
Those are powerful lessons for anyone, really,
They are.
but especially for those who want to shape the future of our nation.
Phule's legacy reminds us that social change is something that's always happening.
Yeah.
It needs us to be aware, committed, and to really believe in the dignity and equality of everyone.
As you continue learning about modern Indian history and getting ready for your UPSC exams, keep Jyotiba Phule's story in mind. Let his courage, his vision, and his dedication to social justice inspire you.
Real change needs more than just knowledge.
Yeah.
It needs action.
Right.
Ask yourself how you can use what you know about history and the skills you have to make a real difference in the world.
That's a powerful thought to end on.
It is.
Thanks for joining us
Of course.
on this deep dive into the life and work of Jyotiba Phule.
Absolutely.
If you found this helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.
Yes.
Until next time, keep those questions coming and keep exploring the past so we can understand the present and create a better future.